So far, you've learned how to equalize and compress vocal sounds. Now it's time to take a look at background audio. For those of you following along, I have opened the O5 Adding Sound Effects project. Background sounds fall into two main categories: sound effects and music. Let's start by looking at sound effects. In movie and television sounds, you'll often hear the term Foley effects. Named after Jack Foley, a Universal Studios sound artist, Foley effects were originally live performances where footsteps, doors closing, and other sounds were acted out while a film was played back. Today, we can leverage libraries of sound effects and take advantage of Final Cut Pro's viewable waveforms to quickly add Foley to the action. Right at the start of our sequence, we have a lock being twisted, then unlocked a couple of shots later. Let's add a sound effect for both of these shots. Select the Music and Effects browser, then make sure Final Cut Pro's sound effects is selected. If you don't see this folder of sound effects, you may need to download the additional content for Final Cut Pro 10. You can do this by choosing Software Update from the Apple menu. Use the search field at the bottom of the browser to search for lock. Double-click each sound to audition it. Lock 3 sounds like it'll work for the first shot, and Lock 1 has a nice definitive sound that makes it ideal for the second when the deadlock is finally unlocked. Drag Lock 3 onto the timeline underneath the first clip. Let's listen back. Now looking at the video, use the left and right arrows to step through the clip until you see the lock lever begin to move. Drag the start of the clip to line up with the position indicator. To keep the suspense going, let's option-click the volume line to add a couple of keyframe points, and then drag the level down to about -18 dB to keep the sounds from overpowering the scene. We'll be adding music over all of this a little later. You can then trim a little off the end and add a slight fade to make sure the sound exits cleanly. Now it's time to add the sound of the final unlock. Drag Lock 1 into the timeline below the Lock 3 clip. You can already see the peak from the original audio showing where the lock clicks. Move your position indicator to the start of that peak. Now, drag the central peak of the Lock 1 effect so that it lines up. Listening back, the lock sounds believable, but not all that dramatic. This is the height of tension in the scene, and modern audiences expect pyrotechnics at such moments, not realism. Click the disclosure triangle next to the Final Cut Pro sound effects, select Impacts and Crashes. Clear the search field to resume browsing. Now, you could search the entire listing here, but actually the arrow body impact right up at the top will work just fine. Drag it into the timeline and line up its highest peak with the unlock moment. Trim the start of the clip to the start of Lock 1, and then adjust the fade handle to ease the sound in. Play back to take a listen. Now we could be done here, but then we'd be cheating all those viewers with large subwoofers in their living room. Click in the search field and type LFE to jump to the LFE impact effects. LFE simply stands for Low Frequency Effects. Locate LFE Hit Impact 05 and drag it into the timeline. Line it up with the impact point. This will add a nice low-frequency rumble to the climactic moment. To clean up a little, drag down the volume of the lock and arrow effects so that they don't clip the meters. We now have a nice dramatic sound effect, but in the true Hollywood style of go big or go home, let's add some reverb to the whole sound. We could add reverb to each individual clip, but there's an easier way. Final Cut Pro's compound clips. Compound clips allow you to convert 2 or more clips into a single clip and then apply effects to all clips at once. This also helps with the specific issue related to delay and reverb effects, which is the lack of sustained tails. In Final Cut Pro, when a clip ends in the timeline, so do any effects connected to it. Any echo or reverb tail will instantly be cut to silence when the clip ends. We want a nice reverb tail to continue after our sound's finished, so we'll artificially lengthen the clip length to accommodate. Select the generator's browser and drag a custom solid into the timeline below the lock and arrow sound clips. Extend it to leave room for a nice tail after those two sound effects end. We won't include the LFE effect in our compound clips, since adding reverb to the low frequency sounds will most likely muddy up our mix. Select Lock 1, Arrow Body Impact, and the custom solid. Right-click the selected clips and choose New Compound Clip. That's it. You now have a single clip representing the 3 original clips. From the effects browser, select Spaces and then the Modest Cathedral preset. A nice spacious reverb is added to the compound clip, and thanks to the solid we added, the reverb can continue long after the lock and arrow body impact clips are done.
Jennifer!
We'll add a fade to tidy up the ending.
Jennifer!
You may be wondering how you can make adjustments to the individual clips now that you've created a compound clip. That's actually very simple. Just double-click the compound clip. A separate timeline opens to reveal the clips inside the compound clip. You can make any adjustments you need to make here, and then click the back arrow to return to the main sequence. As you play through the sequence, you'll discover many other sections in need of sound effects. Try adding swiping sounds to Tracy's swinging of the lampstand, and create appropriate Foley as the plug is pulled in the wall socket. You'll be surprised by just how many useful sounds you'll discover in Final Cut Pro's sound library. We'll use a music bed to add suspense to the opening of our scene. Final Cut Pro 10 offers easy access to the music in your iTunes library for just such purposes. For licensing reasons, this music isn't included with your downloaded files, but you can substitute one of your own tracks for the exercise. Select the Music and Sound browser, and in the iTunes section, select Music. Search for the track you're after, and then drag it into the timeline. It's that simple. Now we'll simply trim the music appropriately. Adjust the levels, and we now have a nice source of suspense for the scene intro.